For more, let's cross to Weilheim near Munich. Douglas Bolduc is managing editor at Automotive News Europe. Thank you for speaking with us here on France 24.
Great to be here tonight. Thanks for having me.
Where to begin, Douglas? I guess the big question is, does this make sense?
Well, that is a very debatable, but on a lot of levels, it does make quite a bit of sense because it would provide some strengthening for both Renault and Fiat. Both sides of the equation has something that the other one wants and needs, and so it could work. But boy, oh boy, it's going to be a long road to get there.
Yeah, because it's going to be about deciding, well, first of all, who's the boss, which by now it seems as though the Agnelli's would keep the presidency of the company.
Yeah, what we're hearing now, this hasn't been confirmed yet, but John Elkann, who is basically the head of the Agnelli family and the head of their investments, Exor, the company that he leads, would be in charge. So you would have definitely a strong leader at the top and one who knows something about mergers and putting things together, as he worked, basically arm in arm with Sergio Marchionne, the late Sergio Marchionne. So John Elkann definitely has the skills to lead an alliance of this size.
This comes on the heels of the demise of Carlos Ghosn. On Wednesday, how do you think Nissan's going to react when its board convenes?
Well, it's going to be a bit of deja vu because, as we have heard, Carlos Ghosn was trying to create a deeper relationship with Nissan. And one of the open questions in all of this is whether or not Renault has put themselves into a situation where if Nissan says, you know what, it's been a nice 20-year relationship, but now it's time to go our separate ways, that Renault is not left in a very weak situation. A lot of the question is whether or not, Nissan, which has shown a great deal of resistance to forming a deeper partnership with Renault, will use this as an opportunity to exit or potentially, as you mentioned at the top, create the largest automaker in the world.
Is that something, by the way, that will be approved by regulators? Again, whenever there are these giant concentrations, you wonder, is it good for consumers? Is it good for the workers in the factories?
Yeah, that will be one of the most difficult jobs. And what will have to happen will that the the regulators will have to look at this region per region. Does this create too much of a monopoly in Europe? Does it create too much of a monopoly in the U.S.? Does it create too much of a monopoly in South America? So each one of those particular questions is going to be needs to be answered by the regulators in those large regions. So that will be complicated because the breakdown and the shares and the amount of market share that the companies have in those different markets varies quite a bit.
It's been a long time since we've seen Renaults driving on U.S. streets. Your thoughts on the potential for the French car maker to return to the North American market?
Well, I mean, with Fiat Chrysler, they have access, or they would have access to a very strong platform called CMF. And with that, Fiat Chrysler, which is extremely weak in all of the segments besides the what we refer to as the mini car segment, where they have the Fiat 500 and the Fiat Panda, they would all of a sudden have a strong platform and be able to jump into the game. They'd be back in the small car market and the compact car market and the mid-size car market because Renault is already competing there with more than decent products. So having that ability would be a huge advantage to Renault and would give them an opportunity to make a stake for themselves in the US market because they would have products that would be interesting. And maybe not so much would it be sedans, but definitely the crossovers, which are popular in both the US and in Europe. And Fiat really doesn't have anything to offer in this hot segment of crossovers and SUVs.
One final question for you, Douglas Bolduc. The French media playing up the fact that one of the factors that was so important in this coming together is the research and development that's needed to build next generation hybrids and electric cars. The old combustion engine is teetering.
Oh, yes, absolutely. I mean, it will not disappear overnight. No one needs to worry about that. However, the speed with which the automotive industry, particularly in Europe, is being dragged into the move to electrification is going to speed up, and we're going to see this very much in 2020 and 2021 when tougher regulations for CO2 emissions come into effect. So the fact that Fiat Chrysler is so weak in this area, I mean, absolutely a non-player, and Renault arguably the strongest when it comes to electrification in Europe, that is a big, big gain that Fiat Chrysler could have. And Renault would have the gains of, if you have the economies of scale and you're filling factories building these cars for multiple brands, that's also an advantage.
Douglas Bolduc, managing editor of Automotive News Europe. Thank you so much for speaking with us on France 24.
Thanks for
Stay
having
with
me.
us.
Have a great night.